Hello everybody and welcome to the Bloomerang Academy class on online giving. My name is Emmanuel Green and I'll be your instructor today. This class will be about an hour long and we'll cover a number of topics. First off, how to add a transaction processor to Bloomerang, which you'll need in order to be able to process credit card and EFT donations within Bloomerang. We'll then go over how to create an online giving form, how to create an event registration form, and what you can do to customize your Bloomerang-hosted forms. We'll also cover some fraud prevention techniques and tools that you have available to you through Bloomerang. And finally, we'll go over how to report on the donations that come in through the online giving tools. So first off, adding a transaction processor. Now, what is a transaction processor, you might ask? They are a company that will process your credit card donations and EFT donations, and you'll need to have a transaction processor integrated with Bloomerang in order to take those types of donations online. Bloomerang partners with two different transaction processors. There's Stripe and there's Moolah, and you can see the details about both of these transaction processors on our website. If you go to bloomerang.co, click on Features and then Payment Processing, and you can see all of the details for those. They're both great options. Stripe is really good if you're just getting started. They have low fees. They actually have a special nonprofit rate of only 2.2%. Plus 30 cents per transaction. A little bit more for American Express, though. But they're really easy to get set up. They have those low rates, and they're very easy to work with, so we definitely recommend them, especially if you're just getting started. If you need something a little more powerful, we recommend Moolah. Moolah is a processor that can process EFT donations. So an EFT is an electronic funds transfer, sometimes called an ACH, and that's basically where you can pull money directly from a donor's bank account. The advantage of an EFT donation is that they're much cheaper for the organization. They're only flat rate of 80 cents per transaction, as opposed to the 2.5% that Moolah charges for credit card donations. The disadvantage is that there are fewer consumer fraud protection capabilities in an EFT, so it may be a little bit more difficult to convince your donors to give you EFT donations rather than credit cards. But if you have the option, it's a good idea, especially for large donations, because it's a flat rate, so you're not taking that percentage off the top. So Moolah and Stripe, both very good choices. And let's see how to set those up in Bloomerang. So if you go to your Bloomerang dashboard, go ahead and click on the Settings icon in the lower left here, and then View All Settings. Then we're setting up a transaction processor, so this is in the Transactions area. So if you hit Edit here, it'll open this slide out, and then Transaction Processors here on the right. So I have a number of processors set up already for myself, but if you want to set up a new one, you can just go up here in the corner and click New. And you'll have a choice of a number of different types of processor that you can set up. So Stripe, very simple, as we already talked about. You may notice that Moolah is not on the list here. That's because in order to use Moolah, we actually partner with Authorize.net. So Authorize.net is a company that manages a whole bunch of different payment processors. They're kind of a gateway between really hundreds of different processors. And so Moolah is the one processor that we recommend using out of the Authorize.net processors. But really, you could use, if you already have a relationship with a payment processor that uses Authorize.net, you should be able to use them with Bloomerang as well. So if I go here to create a new Authorize.net processor, we have the edit page. This is pretty straightforward, and the Stripe page, as you can see, is also very similar. You'll create a name for the processor. You can add a note if you like. That won't actually do anything in the system, but it might be helpful for you if you have multiple processors and you kind of want to keep them straight. And then you'll have a place over here on the right to put in your processor keys. We have links to sign up for both of our partner processors. So you'll have to go there, sign up, fill out an application, send in your nonprofit paperwork, and so forth. But once you're set up, you will get a pair of keys. You'll get the secret key and the publishable key. And you'll need to paste those into Bloomerang in order to make that connection work. It's very important that you not share that secret key because, as the name implies, it's secret. So basically treat that like a password, because anybody who has that secret key will be able to make charges on your account. So you don't want that getting out there. The publishable key is what's going to be visible to the donor. Well, most donors won't see it, but if you're on an online form and you know what you're doing, you can pull up the code and see that publishable key. And that's kind of like your account number. It tells the form which processor to send the charge to. But that's okay to be public. The secret key, however, is not. So make sure you don't mix those up. When you're all done, just hit save, and that will save the processor, and then you're ready to go. So let's go ahead and make an online donation, and you'll see what our forms can look like. So we're using the Bloomerang-hosted donation page here to give you an example. So even if you don't have a website yet, or if you're just getting set up, or if you haven't had the chance to integrate the form with your own website, we do have a Bloomerang-hosted form that you can use. And I'll show you how to get to that a little later on in the class. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a donation so you can see what happens here. I'm going to put in my donor name. And of course, I need to fill in a billing address. You have the option to take custom fields as well. So if there's some additional information that you want to collect about your donors, you can put custom fields on the form there. We recommend not having too many custom fields on the form, because as the form gets longer and longer, it's harder to fill out, and there's a chance that the donor could get frustrated and abandon the form. But if you have one or two pieces of information that you would find valuable to collect, you can go ahead and put custom fields on your form as well. So I'm going to say I'm in a walnut kind of mood today. The donor can add comments as well. So they can put in whatever information they would like there. And then down here at the bottom we have this Increase My Impact option, where you can add an amount to help offset the bank fees. So this amount here is calculated based on the amount of the donation. So you can see if I increase the amount of my donation, then the amount of this down here will increase as well. We call this feature True Impact. So this is allowing the donor to see the true impact of their donation and to let 100% of the money go to the organization. It's worth noting that this amount is really just an estimate because depending on the credit card that the donor is using, and sometimes even the amount of money that you're collecting over the course of the month, the amount of fees that are charged could be different. So there's really no way to know at the time that the donor makes the donation how much those fees are going to be. We have some formulas that we can make our best guess based on their processor and the amount of the donation, but it's worth noting that that's not exactly 100% accurate. But the donor has the option to select that there. We actually recommend that you don't use this feature, and I'll show you how to turn that off in the form settings. The best practice is that it takes the donor out of the modality of giving a gift and is making them think a little more about the logistics of what's happening and, where's my money going and what are all these bank fees and that kind of thing. So My understanding is that the best practice is not to include the true impact option. But if that's something that you want, if it makes sense for your organization, feel free to turn that on in your form settings. And then down here at the bottom we have the CAPTCHA. So you've probably seen these online. It's a simple test to make sure that the person filling out the form is a real person and not a robot. It's really, really important that you turn on CAPTCHA for fraud prevention. We'll go into the fraud prevention stuff a little later in the class, but it's becoming a big problem these days. There's a lot of online form fraud, and turning on CAPTCHA is the single biggest thing that you can do to help prevent fraud. And it's very easy to turn on. All you have to do is click this checkbox here, and you're good to go. So then I'm going to enter my payment information. And this pops up a new window here. And this is kind of interesting because this form here is actually coming from a company that we partner with called Spreedly. And they are going to securely take the credit card number. So Bloomerang actually never sees the donor's credit card information. They will put the number into this Spreedly form. We'll get it back an approval or a decline, and be able to process that charge. But we never actually see the donor's credit card number. We take security very seriously here at Bloomerang, and so we want to limit ourselves as much as possible from even knowing any information that could potentially be problematic. So even if something were to happen and someone were to get into Bloomerang's database, they wouldn't be able to get your donor's credit card numbers. Not that we expect that to happen, of course. As I said, we take security very seriously. I'm going to go ahead and fill in a test card. So obviously, in this case, your donor would give their actual credit card number. And then we'll click Donate. It'll process the transaction. And then it pops up this nice thank you message thanking them for their donation. You'll see that there are some social media buttons down here. So if they want to send a tweet telling how much they liked the donation, or follow you on Facebook, or share your donation page on Facebook, they can do that. So some nice little social media options there. And then we will send a couple of emails. So first off, there will be an email sent to the donor to thank them for their donation. That looks like this. Now you'll notice that this looks kind of boring. It's really more of a receipt than an actual thank you email. So we'll give you the option to customize your own thank you email as well. But even if you don't do that, we send this this sort of receipt thank you email. And then your organization will also get a confirmation email. And this will have all the details about the donation that you just received. So we've got the date, the amount, fund. Any comments that the donor put on the form will be in the email, so you can see that really easily. So there we go. And let's just take a quick look at the donation in Bloomerang. So it shows up on the donor's timeline, and you can see the amount here. Any comments that they put on go into the note field, and you can see that this credit card was processed with the Stripe processor. And we've got our custom field for nut facts, so you can collect those. If you have any questions, feel free to chat them in. So we'll try to get to any questions as they come up. We're going to go into where you can access that hosted form here in just a moment. And we'll also talk about how to customize the form and some ways that you can customize the form even beyond what Bloomerang normally allows. So let's take a look at how to do that. To create your forms, you'll open up the settings icon here in the lower left and go to View All Settings. And then in the lower right corner here we have Website Integration. So this is a place for all of your online form and other integrations with your organization website. And then what we're going to talk about today are these first two options here, online giving forms and event registration forms. Let's look at online giving forms. You'll have a list of forms here, and of course if you don't have one, you can create a new one by clicking this new button. I'm just going to go ahead and open the form that I've already demoed. So this is where you set up the form. It should be pretty self-explanatory. You have to give it a name. You tell it which transaction processor you want to use. So in our case, we're using the Stripe test processor. And then the confirmation email. So by default, we create a Bloomerang default confirmation email, which I showed you. If you want to, you can create a custom confirmation email that is more personalized, has maybe your organization logo, thanks the donor, maybe includes some links to your website or more information about you, really thanks the donor for their gift. We highly recommend that you do that. And actually creating the email is beyond the scope of this particular class. We have a lot of things we need to cover. But Bloomerang Academy does have other classes about how to create custom emails in Bloomerang. Once you've set up a transaction email and given the purpose as acknowledgement, then it'll show up in this list and you can pick it from the drop-down. And then they will automatically get that email whenever they make a donation online. I showed you the organization notification email. By default, that is always sent to the email address of your organization, so whatever email address you have set up in your organization settings. If you have other email addresses that you'd like that notification to go to, maybe you have a person on your staff who's responsible for thanking the online donors, or if you have a website person who wants to know when donations come in, something along those lines, you can just click this Add Email button and put in the email address of whoever you would like to get notified. We support up to 10 additional emails that you can add, as well as the default organization email. So that should be plenty to let everybody who needs to know that you got a donation on that form. Then you can set up the fund, campaign, and appeal for your donations. By default, if you just have a single fund and then a campaign and appeal, the donor doesn't see those, but they will come in tagged with those pieces of information when the donation comes into Bloomerang. If you want the donor to be able to pick where their money will go, you can actually add multiple funds, and you can change the name of the fund as well. So let's say I want this to be called Squirrel Houses instead of Building Fund. So you can have your display name on the form be different than your fund name that you use in the back office. Campaign and appeal will never show up on the form themselves, so you can pick where you want the transaction to go. For recurring donations, we do have the option on all of our donation forms to make a recurring donation. By default, there's this checkbox that says show my support by making this a monthly donation. But if you want to give the donor a little more customization, they can select the frequency and the start date of their gift. So if they wanted to say, I want my donations to go weekly starting next Tuesday, they could do that. If not, it'll just be a monthly donation and it'll start today. Then we have that true impact option where the donor can offset some of the bank fees associated with their gift. So you can enable that or disable it. And then you set up your donation levels. So these are the default options that show up for how much to donate. Of course, there's always going to be an option for the donor to make a custom gift amount, but these are the default options. And you have these impact statements here next to the amounts. We find that it's very important to set up these impact statements to just give the donor a quick idea of what their gift will accomplish. So it really helps to have a concrete example of what the money can do in order for the donor to really visualize that and feel like they're supporting something something specific. These don't have to be exactly where the money is necessarily going to go. A $25 gift is enough to support a family of squirrels for a month. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a family of squirrels lined up. But it is important to have those impact statements to tell the donor the sorts of things that their gift can accomplish. And you can add as many of these as you like. And then custom fields down at the bottom here. You can add any custom fields that you have set up in your database, constituent custom fields and transaction custom fields. So in my case, I have favorite type of nut because it's a squirrel organization and squirrels care about nuts. When you're done setting up this, you'll go to the next page, and this is where you customize the success page for the donation. So you can give a title and a message body for the thank you. If you want to do social media, you can put in your Twitter and Facebook information and toggle whether or not you want to have those buttons show up. And they will show up on the donation page and then also on the default confirmation email so that the donor can connect to you socially. If you want to do more customization than this on the success page, because this really is just room for a couple of sentences, so if you want something more elaborate, what we recommend is that you set up a landing page on your website that's a thank you page, and then you can click this redirect to URL button and put in the address of that web page on your website. And then what will happen is after the donor has made their gift, it will send them to that landing page where they can be thanked appropriately. So that's a great way if you want your success page to be a little more personalized to your organization. Maybe you can include some multimedia, thank you video, for example, or something along those lines. You can do that by putting in the address of that page here. For now, though, I'm going to go back to the basic success page in Bloomerang. I'll hit Save and Preview, and now I can see a preview of what my form is going to look like. I can see what the success page is going to look like. Once I'm satisfied with that, I will click Publish. And the form is now live on the hosted form, and I'll show you how to get there in just a moment. But if you want to put the form on your own website, we have this little script tag, and all you need to do is copy and paste this script onto your website, put it in the place in your website where you want the form to appear, and then Bloomerang will actually load the form and insert it into your website in the appropriate place. So this makes it really easy for you to integrate your online forms into your own website so that the donor doesn't have to click away to another page. Now there are a couple of limitations to this. Obviously, you need to be able to edit the code of your website to put this script tag in. But more importantly, you need to have a security certificate in order to accept online donations this way. For a security certificate, that's going to encrypt the transaction so that it's safe to put the credit card details onto the form. And you'll know you have one if you have this little lock information on your website, this little lock icon, and it will say HTTPS, S for security, rather than just HTTP. If you don't have a security certificate on your website, then the form on the website will just be replaced with a little button that says Donate via Bloomerang. And then they can click that button and it will take them to the Bloomerang-hosted donation page. So the button looks like this, and that will just show up in the place where the form would be. So let's go ahead and show you how to get to that hosted form. So if you did not set up the form on your website, or if you're just getting started and you want to go ahead and have a link that you can put out right now, all you have to do is go to the online giving forms list, click the little arrow here in the right side, and then click View Hosted Form. And that will bring up this page. And you can just copy this address and put it in a link on your website, or send it in an email, or whatever you would like to do. So yeah. Someone is asking about the I'm not a robot feature. We'll cover that toward the end of the class on how you set that up. One thing to note is you get this for free for your hosted donation forms. You don't have to do anything. It'll just automatically be there. When you're doing it on your own website, there's a little more that you have to do to set it up. It's still free in that there's no cost associated with it, but there are a few more steps to get it in there. I do highly, highly recommend that you do that, though. So if this is not enough customization for you, if you really want to do stuff that's not supported, for example, you can set up different donation levels and customize the amounts of those. But if, for example, you wanted to have multiple appeals and have the donor be able to pick which appeal they want, that's not something that the basic form builder allows. But if you really know what you're doing, there is a way, and that way is that on the preview page, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's this section here that says still not right. And so if you really know what you're doing, you can click this button and it will give you the entire code for the form. So rather than just that little snippet where you can paste it onto the website and it'll show up and put the form on there, this gives you the entire contents of the form as it's set up currently. And then you can make any changes that you want. Now, obviously, there are a few caveats. For one thing, you need to know what you're doing and be able to alter the form like that. So you'll need either to know how to edit HTML and CSS and JavaScript, or hire somebody to do that for you. And then the second big limitation is that Bloomerang support will not be able to help you with your self-hosted forms. So we can definitely, with the basic online forms, we can definitely help you with that if you're having trouble getting that to work on your website. But once you go into self-hosted, our support team obviously can't be trained on whatever changes you may have made to the self-hosted form. So you're kind of on your own if you go this route. So it's supported in that it's a feature that's allowed and you can use it, and Bloomerang will allow you to take donations this way, but it's not supported in that our support team will not be able to do too much to help you debug it. But that's a way if you want to do more than what our basic form builder allows. And you can also see once you've gone into self-hosted mode, it will show up with this little self-hosted tag in the form list. So that's basically it for your regular donation forms. Next, we're going to talk about event registration forms. So let's take a look at one of these as well. So these are what you're going to use to allow people to register for paid events. Now, we always get people asking if they can use these forms for free events as well, and the answer is unfortunately no. Paid event forms will record the information as transactions in your Bloomerang database. For free events, there's no transaction because they didn't actually give you any money. So for free events, we would recommend that you use a constituent information form, which creates an interaction in Bloomerang. And things get messy if you try to mix paid and free events, like maybe it's a free event but there's an optional sponsorship or something like that. Unfortunately, we don't have a great way to handle that sort of scenario right now. But let me show you what you can do with a paid event in Bloomerang. The form looks very similar to the donation form, which is intentional. We want it to be unified in terms of design. But when they select a donation level, we'll pop up with this little table here, and they can pick how many tickets they would like to get for this event. And if they want, they can make an additional donation as well on top of the price of their tickets. So I'll go ahead and fill out this form and show you what it looks like in the database, and then we'll go over how to build one of these. Put in my address. And well, today I'm in a pecan mood. You can also put in comments. And of course, we have the CAPTCHA, I'm not a robot. We have the same credit card form coming up here. You'll also notice that it'll have your org name here, so your organization name will show up in the upper left, and in the lower left it'll show the total donation amount and the ticket level that they picked. So just a little extra confirmation for what the donation is. I'll click Register, and it processes, and it will pop up with a little thank you page. So same as the regular donation form. You will have the option here to click this button to purchase additional tickets. That's to get around a limitation of our event registration forms, which is that there's no shopping cart kind of feature, so they can't pick, let's say, 2 of one type of ticket and 1 of another. So in order to kind of accommodate that workflow, there's this button here at the end where you can purchase additional tickets, and that basically just takes them right back to the beginning where they can pick another registration level and fill it out, and so forth and so on. So that is kind of a limitation of these event registration forms. Also, there's no way to do things like promo codes or that kind of thing. And really that just comes down to Bloomerang is not an event management system. So what we can do is a little bit limited. But this is a good solution for simple event registration. And we do have some partners that we recommend if you have more complicated needs. So let's take a look at how to build one of these event registration forms. Click on Settings, and we actually have a shortcut here. You can just click on Website Integration straight from the Settings slide out. You can also go back to View All Settings and click the tile down there. And then we'll go to Event Registration Forms. And same as before, you can create a new form or you can edit one of your existing forms. I already have this one set up, so I'm going to go ahead and go in there. And you'll see that this page again looks very similar to the regular donation form. Obviously we don't have the options for a recurring donation because it's an event, so it's kind of a one-time thing. Down here we have event details. So this is where you put in the details about your registration types that you allow. So you have your event name, registration types, so these are the different levels or tiers for your registration, the amount. You can give a little description. We'd recommend keeping those descriptions pretty short just so that they show up well on the page. And then how many tickets are included. So each registration type can have a different number of tickets. And of course you can change that. So for example, this one here says admission for you and a guest, but there are 4 tickets here. That's a mistake, so I'm going to change that to 2. And you can reorder these in the list as well if you want to highlight your higher tier donations or something like that. You also have a couple of options here. You can add an option for I cannot attend. So this is for people who want to be able to give a donation directly through this event registration form, but they're not actually going to buy any tickets. So if that makes sense for your event, you can go ahead and add that. And then there's an option to allow an additional donation. So if you want to not allow them to add money on top of the ticket sale, you can uncheck this option, and then they will just be able to buy tickets. They won't be able to add an additional donation on top. And then you can set up custom fields. A good use for these custom fields would be if your event includes food. You could set up a field for dietary restrictions. So maybe if you have people who are vegetarian or gluten-free or something like that, this would be a good place to collect that kind of information. Or maybe you have an event where you're going to have T-shirts and you need to know what T-shirt size the person will need. So this is a good way to collect that information. And I'll show you how to report on that in a little bit. When you're done with that, click Next, and you have a little bit more to do. You'll need to set the fund, campaign, and appeal that you want the event to go against. We do recommend when you're making your appeal that you use a unique appeal for each event. That makes it easy to report, because while you can report on transactions that have come in from a particular online form, so you could report on everything that's come in from your event registration form. But if you're taking registrations in other ways, like through the mail, for example, with a check or something like that, then you want one piece of information that you can use to filter down all of your transactions to see the ones for the event. So for that reason, we recommend making a new appeal for each event. And then you can pick that here on the form edit page. And I believe if you don't have an appeal already with your event name, it will give you the option to just create one right here on the page. There's also the tracking. So this is where we set up custom fields on the transaction that will be used to keep track of how many registrants you have, what levels, that kind of thing. So there are two custom fields that will be used for this. There's registration type and there's ticket quantity. If you don't already have those custom fields set up in your database, the form builder can create them for you. So if you just want to let Bloomerang handle it, you don't need to do anything. You can just let the system do its thing, and it'll automatically create the registration type. It'll create the custom field values, the ticket quantity, and you don't need to mess with it. If, on the other hand, you have already set up those custom fields, or you have specific requirements for what you want them to be called or something like that, you can go ahead and set those up and then just pick what you would like it to be called. So maybe you want it to be Gold Sponsorship instead of Squirrel Party, something like that. So you can pick those here. When you're done, you get the success page, and this is exactly the same as it is for donation forms. So I won't spend a lot of time here. And then save and preview. You can see what it looks like. And the success page. And then hit publish, and it will get you the snippet. One thing to note, by the way, is that when you click save and preview, any changes that you make at this point, when you click save, those will immediately show up on your website and on the hosted form. So you don't need to go back and copy that snippet again and put it on your website again. When you save the online form, we will immediately start showing the new version whenever a donor comes to your website. And we'll just go ahead and refresh here, and you can see that I changed the order of these. So as soon as I hit save, it just updated. So I mentioned that one of the things that we're not is an event registration system, and one of the limitations that causes is that you can't limit the number of tickets that you sell for a particular event. So as long as the form is live, people can just keep registering. We don't have a way, we don't have like an inventory system or a way to limit how many tickets you can sell for any particular event. There is a workaround, however, which is you can disable the online form. So what we recommend that you do is just kind of keep an eye on the registrations as they're coming in, and you will get confirmation email, much like for the donor confirmation. You'll get an organization email to say how many tickets they purchased and the registration type and that kind of thing. So we recommend that you just kind of keep an eye on that, and when your event has sold out, you can go in here and just deactivate the form. So click on the drop-down menu, hit deactivate, and you can put a message up. So for example, sorry, we're sold out, try back next year. And once you do that, then anybody who goes to the form will just see that message instead of the form. So we recommend this as a way to handle if you have a limited number of seats at your event and you want to limit that. That's a good way to do that. It's also really good if you have an event that's passed, so if it's already happened and you don't want people to register for it again, then you can go ahead and deactivate the forms there, and then they won't be able to submit those. You'll notice that we only show active events by default on the website integration page. If you want to, we have these filters here in the upper right, so you can see all of them are filtered down to just the inactive ones. So you can see that. And I think that about covers it for event registration forms. So let me just make sure, check my notes here that I didn't forget anything. Again, with these you can set your confirmation email. So the donor will get a default confirmation email, which is pretty boring. It will tell them how many tickets they bought and that kind of thing. But it's really pretty basic. So we recommend that you make your own custom confirmation email, and there you can put some more information about it. Maybe you want to put a map to how you can get there. Maybe you want to put directions on how to park or what to bring or that kind of thing. So we highly recommend that you set up a custom confirmation email for your event. So let's talk about the topic that nobody wants to talk about, which is fraud. Online form fraud is a big problem these days. You get people who will buy stolen credit card numbers online, and they will use nonprofit donation forms to test those cards to see if they still work. And then if they do, they can either turn around and sell them or make a big purchase before the owner of the card realizes that their card has been stolen. So this is not good, both for the cardholder and also for you, because when this happens, we tend to see that you get a lot of submissions, sometimes hundreds of fraudulent transactions, because they're just going down a list of card numbers and trying them over and over again. This is particularly bad for you because if this happens, once the cardholder discovers that their card has been stolen, they'll contact their bank, and you will have to refund the money, and you might also have to pay some extra fees on top of that. So we don't like that, so we want to limit that as much as possible. Fortunately, Bloomerang has some tools that you can use to help prevent fraud. So for one thing, you can set up a rate limit. So this is basically saying we're only going to allow a certain number of transactions coming in within a certain time frame from the same place. This helps if you have a hacker who's just submitting forms over and over again from their computer, because once it's gotten a certain number of them, the system will just lock them out and say, no, you can't send any more forms for a while. This is only somewhat effective. Sophisticated hackers are able to disguise where they're sending the transmissions from, and so it'll appear to bounce around all over the world. So the rate limit is only somewhat effective. And it also has some issues because if you legitimately do want to take a lot of transactions from the same location, maybe you're at an event and you're registering a whole bunch of people at once, or maybe you're a school or an office where there are a lot of people in the same location. You don't necessarily want them to get blocked. But in a lot of cases, having rate limits on is a good thing. It will prevent those sort of low-hanging fruit hackers from being able to send you hundreds of bad transactions. So we do recommend turning that on, but you may want to think about your particular needs and whether that makes sense. What I highly, highly recommend, though, for everybody to do is turn on CAPTCHAs. So that's the checkbox. So the donor, when they go to make their donation, all they have to do is check this box that says, "I'm not a robot." It's super easy. It's very simple for a human to do. But if it's a program that's going through and submitting the transactions, then it will get blocked. Once again, Bloomerang-hosted forms have CAPTCHA turned on by default, so you don't need to do anything to get that. But if you want to put the form on your website, then you need to create an account and get a site key and a secret key to put in for the reCAPTCHA. We have a link here to where you can sign up. We have instructions for how to do that. It's really easy. You just need a Google account. If you use Gmail, you already have a Google account. But even if you don't, there's a good chance you do. And if you don't, you can make one. It's free. And you just give them the information about the website that you are that you're trying to use, and then you can get the keys that you need to be able to turn on CAPTCHA on your own website. You'll put the keys into the fraud prevention form here, and then click the checkbox to use CAPTCHA for transaction forms. If you want to, you can also use CAPTCHA for interaction forms. So those will be your email sign-up forms, or if you have a volunteer information form. You can turn CAPTCHA on for those, and we do recommend that, but it's less of an urgent priority because there's no financial issue there. You're not accepting fraudulent credit cards if something goes wrong. You may have to clean up a whole bunch of bad email addresses or something, but that's not as much of a problem because you're not on the hook for dealing with the transactions. So I highly, highly recommend that you set up CAPTCHA. If you have any questions about this or you're not sure, our support team is great and they can walk you through the whole process. And they will be happy to do so because they would much rather have you sign up for CAPTCHA and not get fraudulent transactions than deal with the support tickets of help, somebody submitted 500 bad donations on my form. We found that if you have CAPTCHA turned on, it's very unlikely that you're going to have problems. We're monitoring this all the time and trying to see, what else we can do to prevent fraud, and we see that turning CAPTCHA on is the single biggest thing you can do to prevent online form fraud. Real quick, a couple of other things that you can do to customize the hosted donation page. One person was asking how I got the cute squirrel picture up on the donation page. I did that here in Form Settings. You can upload any file that you would like, and we recommend you use your organization logo, and that way it will show up at the top here of the donation page. And if you don't like the look of this page, you can also upload your own CSS style sheet. So you'll need to have somebody who knows what they're doing in terms of web design to help you with this. But this allows you to upload a style sheet that will then be used to alter the way this page looks. You can't really change the content, but if you want to do things like change the color scheme, change the fonts, move things around on the page, maybe you don't like this big secure donation banner and you want to get rid of it, you can do that using a CSS style sheet. And that's something we recommend that you do if you know how to try to make it look a little more like your website, make it a little less jarring for people to come in and make that donation, so they're not like, oh wait, what happened? Am I still donating to this org? So we do recommend that you at the very least upload your logo. But if you know what you're doing, you can upload an external style sheet as well, and that'll let you make it some additional changes there. So we have to move along quickly. We've only got about 10 more minutes here. So let's take a look at how you report on these transactions. So I went to Reports, Report List, and then I just click New. I'm going to make a new report from scratch. And this is going to be a transaction report because with these forms, donors are submitting transactions. And we can add filters. So let's say I just want to see the donations that have come in from my online form. So my online form, and you click that, and it will give you a list of all of the online forms that you can choose from. So let's say I want to see the donations coming in from both forms. I'll click that. And now you can see all of the donations that I've done on either of those forms. And let's say that I wanted to get the information about the event registration. So once again, I recommend that you do this based on appeal. So I'm going to select Appeal, and then I can choose which appeal I want. I created a unique appeal just for this one event. So I'm going to hit OK. And then I can see my donation here. And you can add some additional columns. So I would recommend adding the columns for the ticket quantity and the registration type. And that way you can see who's signed up at which levels for your events. We had someone ask if they recommend using a new appeal if you have an annual event, if they recommend using a new appeal every year. That's definitely something you can do. Another option is to add filters to the report to filter on date. So you could say, I only want donations from this year, and then it will filter it down. It's really up to you whether you want to make a new appeal every time or whether you want to add those date filters. Whatever makes sense for your situation. So I believe that just about covers what we have for you today. Again, for the reports here, we recommend that you create some reports, especially if you have events. This will allow you to keep track of who's signing up, how many tickets they've purchased, and then you can use those to send follow-up communications, letting people know and letting people know what their when the event is, send them a reminder when it's coming up, that kind of thing. So yeah, a question about CAPTCHA, whether they have to register if just using Bloomerang forms. So the difference is whether or not you're using the Bloomerang-hosted form, so this web page, or whether you're taking that form and putting it on your own website. So if you're putting the form on your own website, you will need to create an account and register to get those CAPTCHA keys. If you're only using the hosted donation page, maybe if you don't have a security certificate for your website, or if you just don't want the hassle, or maybe you don't even have a website yet, and you just want to use the hosted form, then you don't need to worry about it because Bloomerang will handle the CAPTCHA for you at that point. So yeah, if you have any other questions, we have just a few minutes, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. And if we don't have time to get to all of your questions now, feel free to send them in anyway, and I will make sure that someone from our support team follows up with you to get you the information that you need. And I'm just going to look through my notes here and make sure that I didn't forget to mention anything. So we covered how to set up a transaction processor in your database, either Stripe or Moolah, how to make a donation form and the different options that you have there, where to set up your custom confirmation emails, and also how to create those self-hosted forms where you get the code and then you can do whatever you want and put it on your website. We also covered event registration forms, where donors can register for events using Bloomerang and purchase a certain number of tickets, and then fraud prevention, CAPTCHA, and rate limiting, and some ways that you can customize the secure donation page. So I think, and then of course reporting, how you can then get the information back about the donations that have been made. So I think that about covers it. Thank you very much for attending, and we will send out a link after the class so that you can view the video if you want to review this or pass it along to any of your colleagues who might not have been able to attend. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to chat in to our support team. Just click on the little help icon in the corner, and you can either send them an email or you can hop on a live chat, and they will be happy to help you and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.